is Adebayo. He is an editor with Premium Times Nigeria. Please put your hands together for him. Third on my list, of course, is Mr. Kemi Busari. He is the editor DUBAWA and an editor for Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism. Please put your hands together. Next on our list is Mr. Kunle Adebajo. I sometimes call him the Wizard of Conflict Reporting. Please put your hands together for this investigative editor, Kunle Adebajo of HumAngle. I am very sure some of you will be wondering, where are the ladies? If you don't mind, please put your hands together for this amazing young lady, Miss Amaka Okoye of Arise TV. Please put your hands together for her. And to moderate this session, of course, I'd like to hand over the microphone to our boss, also known as, okay, I won't tell you what the AKA is all about, but please welcome Mr. Chido Onumah of African Center for Media and Information Literacy. He will be moderating this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here. We don't have much time. How much time do we have? Just an hour. Okay, so we just... Okay, we'll try. So we'll just basically ask people to introduce themselves briefly and what stories they've been working on in the last perhaps few months or years, then how that intersects with the topic or the theme of this panel. So we'll start with you, ma'am.
So I'm Amaka Okoye, as Ellie mentioned, and can you hear me? Okay. And I've been working on a couple of stories, really, because from last year, beginning of last year up until November, I was in a different employment and basically working on different documentaries. But from December of last year up until now, my new employment, I've been covering conflicts, which means that all of the conflicts that crisis abductions that you have heard, typically I've covered every one of them in terms of going on ground. So from Kankara when it happened in Katsina to, Kagara in Niger State, and of course in Jengebe, Zampara, and then Afaka happened, and then of course Birni Yaouri in Kebbi State happened. Essentially, that's how it's happened. So basically, mine has been covering all of these mass abductions that we have seen and being able to do a follow-up story after, because unfortunately in Nigeria, what we are now seeing is a question of, people are kidnapped, and then after a couple of months, we hear they are released, and then we do a follow-up story and hear the people being able to talk about their experiences. So mine is actually being able to document all of those experiences so that it does not end as figures. When we hear in Nigeria, 40 people have been killed, it just sounds like figures. And, being deliberate about putting faces to these figures so that we don't get used to this unfortunate situation. Of course, I also had the opportunity to return back to Chibok, and then some story that we're working on the stories of those who have not returned, how far, their parents still waiting, whether or not they're going to return, time will tell.
All right, thank you very much. We'll hear from the next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kunle Adebajo. I currently serve as the investigations editor at HumAngle, which is a conflict reporting platform in Nigeria. So we focus on conflict situations and humanitarian crises across Africa, but especially in Nigeria, Southeast, Southwest, Northwest, North Central, Northeast. But personally, my focus has been the Boko Haram insurgency in the Northeast, as well as terrorism slash banditry in the Northwest. So I especially draw my attention to how the crises are affecting ordinary lives. And in the Northeast, we are also paying attention to transitional justice issues, including reconciliation, reintegration, giving compensation to the victims of war, and so on. I'll stop there.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Taiwo Adebayo, and I'm an assistant editor for investigations at Premium Times. In the area of conflict and extrajudicial killings, my work has focused on the ground reporting of the conflict in northern Nigeria, especially southern Kaduna. In southern part of the country, I've also worked on the separatist agitations in Yoruba land, Igogon particularly, and have reported on the ESN hip-hop agitations, which are now turning violent in the southeast. And sometime last year, I also reported the Oyigo killings, which the authorities tried to cover, but I gained a rare access and I was able to report that. A bit outside reporting, I'm also a conflict researcher, and I've worked on the Lake Chad crisis, which includes Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger, and Chad for the ISS, Institute for Security Studies. Yeah, a few other things. I just allow Malam to continue.
Thank you very much. My name is Abdulaziz. Abdulaziz, as earlier introduced, I am Deputy General Editor at the Daily Trust newspapers. And in my position, of course, I am alternate editor for the paper and working on a number of stories with focus areas where we have a mainstay of our reporting, conflicts happening in the north central Nigeria, of course, well, almost everywhere, because one funny thing is that in Nigeria, we have conflict almost everywhere. Just that the dimensions and the actors that differ. But personally, as I have, since moving to Daily Trust this year, paid special interest in what is happening in the Northwest, covering conflicts there, and especially also getting the rare access of being the first journalist to reach out and actually went to visit a camp of the bandits that are terrorizing villagers in large parts of Nigeria in Zamfara. So, and since then, I have been reporting what is happening, from the grassroots, and maintaining the contacts with locals and also with the bandits all this time.
My name is Kemi Busari. I'm the editor of DUBAWA. DUBAWA is a an independent fact-checking platform in Nigeria. When I'm not editing fact checks, I also is tracing the cases of extrajudicial killings during COVID-19. So one of the most consequential investigations I've done in the past 18 years is tracing the extrajudicial killings that occurred in Nigeria during the lockdown. Nigeria went on lockdown on, I think, February 28, 2020, and between that time and when the lockdown was eased in May about 18 people were killed extrajudicially by the police, by officers of the Nigeria Correctional Service, by the soldiers. I tracked these 18 cases to know the status of justice and also to know the true story of the killings. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention and for the wonderful stories. So I'll just randomly go through the speakers from the points I picked up from your intervention. So we'll go back to Abdulaziz. You've done some hard-hitting, headline-grabbing stories. Can you share your experience being in the den of bandits, both in terms of your safety and what that experience, what was that experience was like?
Thank you very much. So actually for me, it was an issue of weighing options. Perhaps in retrospect, we will say like dangerous, as some people later would say that these are people that you can't trust. And it's actually true because largely people on drugs and welding guns and looking for easy money. They are really the most slippery people for one to deal with. But I think both sides took chances. That is because they also fear that I could be a security, I could be planted on them, But so it was 50-50 issue for both of us. But for me personally, I felt the notch that covering conflicts from the sidelines, a lot of times, things that you have not witnessed firsthand or you have not really engaged the actors on whatever conflict it is, it's really difficult to do justice to it. And when therefore I got the little opportunity, I scratched further to explore it. As I said, regarding safety, is not really like one plan or involved security agents, because one of the things, and which is I think vital for us to say for a session like this, is that sometimes you have to trade off somehow your comfort or safety to get the story, in the sense that if I felt that informing the security agencies that I would be traveling to a place like that may jeopardize the whole thing, because they may not want the story to be told. And that was why I decided to just go undercover and also keep it.
So undercover as a bandit.
Well, not really as a bandit, but undercover as like a normal person, not without drawing attention to the trip, whether by informing anybody or even by the way I go. And that means that I had to try and blend like a typical villager, though of course, as one bandit said, that any bandit who sees you cannot leave you, because even though you dress somehow like locals, but once they see, they look at your skin or your palm, they will know that
so
this is.
Just to wrap up, were there specific things you did to prepare you for this trip, like learning the bandit language or code of ethics or things like that?
Well, I think the most important thing is getting a local contact who knows the terrain, because of course they will not come out to the towns as at that time. This was February this year, but also you needed somebody who can, therefore I needed somebody who can volunteer to take me up to the point we agreed to meet. That is one. Then secondly, also, just getting to know how one can get public transport, because I was already in Busari when this came up. So, okay, how do I go to Shinkafi, for example, from Busari? And, of course, luckily I had some rough clothes with me, because I had somehow thought that you just go to those places looking as I do now, for example. So I had, so that was, a bit of, it wasn't much of an issue, but of course, getting someone who almost like somehow made it a bit difficult because the person was now the one raising all these concerns that, oh, these guys, are you sure that they will not do something funny and all that? But I think the contact, which is more important, sorry, just to wrap up, in journalism, contact is almost everything. So because the contact you have determines the information you can get. So the contact who linked me up with them is somebody that they trusted, and also I trust. Therefore, it was easy for us to blend without much of trust issues. We could somehow count, I think the two of us at all times were only looking at that person, not at each other. So because they knew him, I also knew him. So that was the point of contact.
Okay, thank you very much, and congrats. Some of us had our hearts in our mouth, reading your stories thousands of kilometers away. You talked about easy money. Let's go to Taiwo, Adebayo. You are involved in the Pandora paper stories, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
So what financially, what would you say fuels this crisis, whether it's banditry, whether it's, because it survives basically on money, free money or easy money, as Abdulaziz mentioned. If it's possible to tie it with your report on the Pandora paper, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not able to find a direct link, immediately, but thankfully you mentioned drivers of the conflict, and I think that's an important issue, and it's something that's missing in the way the media in Nigeria and much of Africa.
Sorry, not to cut in. Do you know how fundraising operates in that terrain? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, I'm going to mention that. Okay, let me just go that straight. I just did some work for ISS, Institute for Security Studies, on terrorism financing in the Lake Chad region. So I was in the Northeast for some weeks trying to understand factors contributing to the resilience of terrorists. My understanding regarding how they've been able to be resilient over the years is not essentially that they've got someone somewhere who brings big money to them. The thing is that at the local level, they have areas they control. So, and they tax people there, like in the Lake Chad area now, the Baga, for instance, now they control the fishing market there. Then in northern Adamawa, if you go outside of Michika, if you're approaching Madagali, then you are moving to Bonusai, Gosa, they control this area. But now with heavy security presence, one of the things they do is that they invade villages, they invade communities to rob them. They rob banks, they rob people, they collect people's food forcibly and all that. Then they also have like logistics handlers, people in the communities who help them get food and all that. These are the factors contributing to their resilience. But about drivers of the conflict in Nigeria, I'm going to mention that the media in Nigeria, because we are the one responsible for providing content, for the public on this conflict, we have not been able to really help the public understand these drivers. So we still have issue of people thinking that, oh, this thing is about one religious or political agenda. For instance, the issue of farmer-header conflict, for instance, we are not close to resolving the problem, except, of course, we have come to grips with the problem of scarcity, environmental problem. In northern Nigeria, which is in the Sahel, region, the resources people need to sustain life as farmers, as herders, are increasingly decreasing by the day. So, and during the dry season, this thing even becomes severe more. So they are forced to move southwards, get into the middle belt first before they get to the southern Nigeria. And in this area too, population is growing. We now need land for housing. So with that scarcity now, in the context of rural places without police, without governance, most of the people, the issue of civility is there. They just resort to self-help. So between a farmer and a pastoralist who are just concerned about resources to graze their cattle or land to plant their crops, they fight. And we in the city, we say, oh, Muslim are scared Christian, Christian are scared Muslim, Hausa are scared Fulani and all that. Whereas these people, they have no concern whatsoever about any religion or ethnic group. What matters to them is just the resource. So I think in the media, we have to go to the ground, try to understand these drivers. Then on that, we can hold the government accountable, to deal with these issues. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Back to Amaka, you have a huge portfolio in terms of reporting on conflicts from bring back our guests to Kankara and so on. What would you say have been the challenges and the kind of impact you think your stories have made?
I suppose the essence of every reporting is to be able to tell the people's story and to bring it to the fore. Because even as a government, even as a people, over time, we forget the stories and, they are lost somewhere. The biggest impact for me is, first of all, before I respond, it's a blessing to be amongst all of these men. It tells you that reporting conflict is not a piece of cake. So to be able to get international attention to stories that ordinarily would not get out there, for me, is the biggest. So for instance, when Kagara happened, it just happened almost after Kankara. And everybody was saying, oh, there was a lot of misinformation because not everybody could go there. We understand, for obvious reasons, it's a volatile area. And then eventually we were able to do that, go into that place and come out. And most of those that would not have been rescued, had we not escalated that story. When I say we, not just the Rise Television, of course, other media people, their story will not be told. Secondly there is something about giving hope to another person just by your story, letting them know that we hear you. So I'm sure Abdulaziz can, relate to that. When you go to these areas and these people, these women and these men and these children look up to you like, we want to tell our story. If you are not here, our story will not be told. You do not know the impact of that when you feel like, I have to tell the story, because if I don't tell the story, these people will not be heard. For me, I think it's the biggest, knowing that you have that responsibility to tell these people's story so that help would come, whether the government hears or state actors or non-state actors.
Thank you very much. So talking about telling the story, let's go back to Kemi. You work with DUBAWA, and some of these stories are not being told, particularly the extrajudicial killings. What has been your experience as far as that's concerned?
Okay, the Nigerian media have somehow, or the Nigerian populace has somehow normalized stories of extrajudicial killings. Say, for instance, in the early 90s, when we were growing up, if there was an accident in a part of the country, it's usually huge news. One person died or a couple of people get injured. But these days, if you read a story about police kill 5 people somewhere in Nigeria, or maybe a soldier shot a civilian somewhere in Nigeria, most of the time we don't give it that much attention. So some of these killings happened when Nigeria was on lockdown. These people were taxed, were given the obligation to protect the country, the police, the soldiers, and some members of the Nigeria Correctional Service. They were given the task to protect these people. and they went ahead to kill them in the name of enforcing lockdown. So I felt it's not enough to just write some news stories about this. Number one, I felt it's very important for people to understand the true story, because there are usually two stories to such killings. The victims, they tell you that the police killed someone, the police killed my son, the police killed my friend, or what have you. And the police will come out to say, oh, we didn't kill anybody. They are rioting, and a stray bullet, maybe from one of them, killed the person. So I wanted to know the true story. And that is why I documented these 18 cases, and I traveled to 7 states in Nigeria to talk to the victims, family members, and friends. Secondly, I am so concerned about the justice for these people. It's interesting to know that out of these 18 cases, it's about a year and a half now, none of them has gotten justice. Out of the 18 cases, only 2 police officers were dismissed. And these 2 police officers are still with their family members, no prosecution whatsoever. So that goes to tell you that the cases of extrajudicial killings are even much more than the EndSARS protests in Nigeria. So knowing the status of justice and then trying to know the true story of these killings motivated me to go out to tell the story.
Okay, so I'll get back to the question of getting justice, but let's go to Kunle. You work with HumAngle. Can you give us an appraisal of the intensity of these conflicts? Certainly some are more than the others. Just give us a snapshot of what some of the conflicts you've covered, what essentially it entails, and how it differs from zone to zone or state to state.
Minutes ago, somebody mentioned that Nigeria's case is becoming quite peculiar because there is no region you would go to that does not have its own distinct security challenges. And the dynamics are also changing really fast. For instance, when it comes to abductions, we know we used to associate kidnappings with the South and Niger Delta militant. And then Boko Haram came with the Chibok abductions in 2014. And it became, again, associated with terrorism. But if you check the statistics lately, you find that there are now more kidnappings taking place in the Northwest than in any other region. So it's the intensity is also, it's not just that we are having more fatalities according to records and press reports. It's also that the problem is spreading to regions that used to be relatively safe. During my recent visit to the Northwest, the trend that I got from Zamfara, Katsina, and Sokoto states was that, when you say bandits, the dictionary definition is that people who operate in rural areas and occasionally attack the residents or try to rob them. And so one of the arguments against that label is that now they don't even operate in just rural areas. They attack local government headquarters, and they are moving from the forest region to communities that are by the highways. So it's a huge problem, and it's a rising problem. And it's something that needs drastic solutions across board. That's my perception.
Thank you. So we'll start with Amaka and just run through the purpose of your intervention. Even though we understand you are media people, you are not involved in the process of law enforcement or ultimately ensuring justice. But in a sense, your report should help in that regard. Do you see a sense in which your report has been taken up by law enforcement agencies? Is there any kind of collaboration with civil society organizations to amplify your stories or do advocacy on that? So we'll just go around with the...
Right, I think that's a very crucial question that you have asked. In terms of authority, so let's talk about security agents, for instance. I think it's a love-hate relationship between the media and, security personnel, whether in Nigeria, particularly. So very often we see ourselves as typically not friends, whereas we should be collaborators. So because there is that hinge, we've not been able to achieve so much in terms of collaboration. Civil society, I must say, yes, they do their bit. And why I say that is after, typically when the news goes viral, when you report this sort of things, the people who stay on it, apart from media, is a civil society organization, because they want to see the end. They want to bring government to respond. They want those who are responsible to act on it. We see that, but again, it's not enough. You did mention that, of course, media, we do our bit in terms of reporting, but we continue to be on their faces. And that's why I say it's a love-hate relationship between us and security personnel. There are several times that, we want to go tell stories, just like Abdulaziz mentioned, that we do not tell the security personnel, not because we want to be killed. I mean, it's like when we went back to Jengebe. Jengebe is the most risky, or Kankara is the most risky as well. But we didn't have to tell the security personnel, not because we don't want their protection, but because we are afraid that if we do, they would not allow us to tell the story. And again, it's always about the people. So I would say not so much has been achieved. It's happening, but very slowly.
Okay, what's your experience?
Oh, yes. So it's like the Ostrich Variable, right? The authorities prefer to pretend there's no problem than try to address them. And you'd find, for instance, in the Northwest, some of the state governments a couple of months ago would insist that we don't want IDP camps. We don't want the intervention of NGOs because there is no problem, because they don't want, it's like trying to get the beggars away from the streets, not trying to solve poverty, issues of poverty. And you would go to some of these communities and they would say, hey, you have to get out of here as soon as possible, because if they know you are here, they would harm you or they would try to bribe you, and our stories may never get out. So we first of all need that sincerity from the authorities to act, and the sort of sincerity that would see collaborative efforts between various stakeholders that would also involve the people at the grassroots. And it's not just about security, it's also about the after effects of insecurity, such that even when you're trying to get relief materials to them, you find that it doesn't get distributed equitably to the people that are most deserving. So at the end of the day, as journalists, if you have to see that documenting the problem itself is a win, because by so doing, the government will have no excuse to say, oh, we didn't know that this is taking place. And for some of us, I think that's enough. But we're not getting enough positive reaction so far.
Yeah, thank you. When I have to conduct any piece of enterprise journalism, a key motivational variable for me is expected impact, and if it has to do with conflict, I get very particular about expected impact. One of the things I would imagine is doing a kind of story that is illuminating in terms of helping people to understand the nature of conflict, so that those who are supposed to act across scales, whether local guys, security people, government officials, can then see what could help them to act. So that's the kind of thing I do. So using the example of Southern Kaduna, the dominant narrative on Southern Kaduna has been that there is a one-side aggressor. That's the dominant narrative. But when I went there, I made sure that I was able to speak with both sides. Particularly, it was very difficult to get to speak with Fulani. And they showed me a lot of things, which I verified. I produced that story, showing that this thing is two sides of carnage. But beyond that, I was able to explore historical documents, to show the actual driver of the conflict. And after the story, the communities, the people at the local level, not people using the media to draw out this conflict. Now, the local people themselves, they started coming together and they started this peace pact, in Kafanchan, in Zangong, Katab. They had a lot of that. So when we reported that this thing is happening, I think we got some commendation from a couple of organizations, including the Sultan of Sokoto and the Khan. Also in Oyo State, the Igogon, the Yoruba Nation thing. Before we went there, the Yoruba Nation president, Sunday Igboho, he had made a lot of claims with which he was able to galvanize the Yoruba people. He was able to mobilize the Yoruba people, and the anti-Fulani sentiment, anti-North sentiment, were very high in Yoruba. So when we went there, I was able to speak with all the victims of kidnapping in all of them. And in our story, we put it out that most of the claims made by Sunday Igboho, were false. And we believe that that helped, shape the understanding of the public. But before I end, let me say that, like Kunle also said, and Amaka, there's not been enough response from the government, even when we provide this kind of information. And secondly, too, from the civil society group, because the conflict in Nigeria has steeped in politics and issue of distrust. We have a situation where the NGOs and the so-called civil society leaders, they have a side already. So when you do a kind of story, however evidential it is, and you try to distort their narrative, instead of joining you to hold the government to account, they form a kind of wagon targeting you, regardless of the evidence you have provided. And that's bad.
Thank you very much. Aziz, can we hear your experience?
Thank you very much. Yeah, just on a lighter note, I know that Adebayo now is a persona non grata in Southern Kaduna, all parts of that place. Well, I think Amaka said something very significant, the issue of trust, and also what Kunle mentioned, the word he brought up, sincerity. Honestly speaking, from my experience, this love-hate relationship that Amaka spoke about is there, which makes it difficult. And I keep trying to say, guys, we are not like out to say you are bad. You should actually embrace us so that we collectively, because we are all Nigerians, at least none of us, I mean, I can speak for myself. I'm not intending to flee to Canada or apologies to the moderator. So I therefore feel
I'm here with you.
But you can get to the next flight to Canada. So the thing is, we all want to see this country as one peaceful and progressive country. And therefore, in my case, just like recently I was talking to HumAngle editor-in-chief, he was raising personal concerns to me about how some even people out there feel that their reporting is perhaps supportive or of terrorists or criminals. I had the same feedback from some people who feel that perhaps covering bandits is like bolstering their confidence up or something like that. But yeah, it's everywhere. But the issue is, I feel what people, especially security agents, fail to understand is, if you don't even understand your enemy, how can you now confront that person? So I feel my job and our job as journalists should be to report all sides of the conflict, and also even help the society, especially for any phenomenon like this banditry, to understand how these people are thinking, what are the drivers and all that. For example, recently the latest story I did, just a short one, it was just more of a security alert, just to say, okay, this is what these guys are saying. Because I spoke to them about like 2 weeks ago, and they were, or 3 weeks, and they were talking about, somebody was talking about, that we are moving, all this carnage we are hearing about in Sokoto. They were saying, oh, it's because we had Nigeria is coming in to help Nigeria. That's why we are moving there to station our men, so to prepare for that. So I just did that, a short story, just to, I feel, for me, in my mind, I was like, this should be like an evidence that can even help the security agents. But as I said in a recent interaction with, as I said at a recent interaction with some security chiefs about 2 weeks ago, one of the key problems is that of misinformation, official misinformation. And as I told them, I feel bad if, for example, like what happened in a recent, in a report where the military churned out information that they have bombarded bandit camp and killed many of them. Some of them have fled, this and that. And then I spoke to locals, not even the bandits themselves. And they say, oh yeah, it's true, they have done bombardment, but the people they killed were innocent civilians, including women and children. So if we did that twice, and one time they almost raided our office in the Air Force on a story about Niger community where they killed a lot of civilians. And I did this one on Zamfara community in Sububu Forest, where they actually striked, but they got the wrong target. So, but then they will try to either, sell you a dummy or even try to deny when, we have, and that is, I think, one key thing for me in this, to say in this session, as conflict reporters or as journalists investigating conflicts, is not something that you do from the comfort of your office. You just have to be in touch with the real people, with the communities, with the people that these conflicts affect directly, or who are witnesses to these things. Because sitting and relying on one or two people that you feel they know, or relying on authorities, it can't really produce any meaningful conflict reporting.
Yeah, thank you. Can we?
Yeah, I think the mic is not working, so I'll just try to project. So for me as a journalist, I used to think there are so many challenges that I face, but chief among those challenges for me is the issue of impact. You doing a story and not even getting a reaction from the authorities that ought to maybe take an action or do something about the issue. So I wouldn't want to repeat what my colleagues have said, but I'll discuss this in three major aspects using some key examples. The first one is the position of the authority. I think in Nigeria, we have one of the most irresponsible authority, be it the government, be it the government agencies or what have you. It's only in Nigeria that you speak to the police, ask them questions about a killing that occurred like a year or 2 years ago, and they will tell you they're still investigating. I mean, what are you investigating for 12 months without an interim report or a full report or what have you? And they've also grown so much courage such that even if you do the story and with any form of public outcry or what have you, they still don't react to the story. So it then comes down to the question of why are we doing this, even as journalists? I try to discuss this with my editor sometimes, but a lot of the time you feel like you have to do it because you have to fulfill your own conscience for doing it. So I think the authorities are so very irresponsible in reacting to stories about conflicts and extrajudicial killings in Nigeria. Then the second actor, which I would like to discuss, is the general public as well.
some of the time you do the story and then the expectation is, oh, when we publish this tomorrow, Twitter is going to be late, Facebook is going to catch fire, people are going to call for maybe prosecution of some people that but eventually you realize that you just put out the story and some people will come to your wall and so what about the things that are happening in other parts of the country? I read the comments on one of my stories and it was Fulani versus Southeasterner, Yoruba versus Hausa. And the story lost its essence through all those kind of comments. And then you'd be like, why can't you just see what I'm trying to push out? And then the third one is the civil society organizations. A lot of time when I do stories, I try to reach out to CSOs and NGOs that are doing one thing or the other about the things I wrote on. But you realize that most of the time, if they don't have something to gain, if, for instance, they don't maybe something go viral already and they want to be in the news, they don't do anything. I don't want to start mentioning names, but I think most of the CSO, civil society organizations we find in Nigeria are guilty of that. But then we still try to do a little bit of what we can do. Today, out of the 18 cases that I tracked, I can say through our efforts, 5 of them have gotten legal representation, and then we are following the case, especially in Kaduna.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll remain with you, talking about how irresponsible the authorities have been over the years. My understanding is that since the return to civilian rule in 1999, the Nigerian police has not successfully prosecuted a case of murder in Nigeria. It's quite telling. Perhaps it's something you guys as investigative journalists may want to explore and put out why the challenge I want, because that's then explains why some of these things we are talking about here, we are unable to achieve them. But I'd like to go back to the issue as it's raised, that talking about being in touch with the locals. Can each of you tell us from your experience, how has this conflict or conflicts, depending from your own different reportings, affected the psyche of the locals? People can't go to school, women are raped, the IDP camps are like some humanitarian disaster, and people are feeding fat, making money off it, and so on. What's the narrative from your sense, reaching out to these people, talking with them? And are there situations where you have the locals are fatigued and they just say, we'll have to start collaborating with these promoters of this conflict, whether it's Boko Haram, whether it's secessionists, whether it's banditry, and so on?
Yeah, from my experience covering extrajudicial killings, the most significant feeling I got from the local is a feeling of hopelessness. A lot of them don't even believe that anything could come out of the investigation that you're doing. Say, for instance, in most of these communities that I went to, I had to persuade some of these people, the father of a child that was killed, the mother of a daughter that was murdered by a police officer, or what have you. So the number one feeling, which is of course psychological, is the fact that they don't believe in the efficacy of the law or the strength of the authority to take any action to get them justice.
Sorry, before you go on, maybe you touch on whether this despondency and lack of belief in the authorities has also left them in a vulnerable situation where they're now willing collaborators.
Okay, I really didn't get I really didn't experience such case. I believe Abdulaziz and Kunle, we have examples of that. But generally, the feeling I got from most of my respondents is the fact that a lot of them would even question you, why are you coming to ask me about the death of my child after several months? Do you want me to start weeping again or something? They've written letters, they've done a lot of things, and there is no justice. So I think that's the most significant feeling I get from them, hopelessness.
Yeah, I think as Kemi has said, witness or hear. okay, in this, in this, I have encountered or heard about so many stories of despondency in communities ravaged by banditry, whether it is in Kaduna, where residents are paying taxes to these people, or in Zamfara, where they are now signing, which is the latest news that is not out there yet, perhaps, they are now signing a peace pact to pay allegiance to the bandits. Because to illustrate, especially what has happened in recent times, over the last maybe 3 to 4 weeks since the so-called shutdown, where so people were given hope. The communities felt, oh, the government is finally going to get at these bad guys. So people came out with the trying to revive their vigilante, trying to give information, but because unfortunately the security forces are not really ready for action, the bandits are still having control. They are still moving freely and terrorizing these people. So, a lot of the communities felt there is no need, why fight? Because the government that should be at the forefront of the fighting is actually missing in action, honestly. And then this is a very critical time. I don't know who advised that they should strike at this time, because very bad time, because this is harvest season in most of these places. People had spent all they had, energy, all their resource to farm, and then it has reached harvest, and then they now started this ill-conceived operation, and which is not working, and people are unable to go to their farms. So therefore, there is that feeling of hopelessness that, oh, if we can't, if you can't fight them, better join them, in the sense that, of course, for many years, communities have had to enter into peace accord with bandits because even when I visited Shinkafi, for example, in February, the people of Shinkafi had some accord with the bandits, maybe like Turji and Halilu operating close to them, but they have like understanding that, okay, so no attacks in this communities. These are like host communities, while they can actually go to Isa, Sawambeni, and other places, far-flung areas, and attack, rustle cattle and all that, and come back to these places. But these are their hosts, for whom there will not be any adversity. So the people no longer do any vigilante, and they don't block food and other items going to these places. So, but now the most recent information we are getting is that this despondency, this failure to really massively move in, which initially it had started making impact because of the shutdown and ban on fuel cell and all that. But like 2 weeks ago, I spoke to somebody from the bush, and they're saying, "Oh, you can hear the young people cheering up. They just got fuel." And I was thinking, is some of these that they are arresting in Katsina, where there's 2 liters, 5 liters. I said, how much fuel? He said, it's one truck, so maybe it could be up to 6 drums. So you see, and these guys still moving and still attacking communities. Almost every other day we report such stories. So this despondency is there. And as one of them told me that, oh, we are, and that is exactly what is happening, that people who revolt against the government, he said this almost presciently, like just not long after the shutdown. But he said people will revolt against the government. So why? He said because the government had shut down these things, and people are hungry, and then there is and the bandits are still there. This was like the bandits saying this, and of course that's what is happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. One big problem Nigeria has got now is that of legitimacy crisis. You know, Nigerians are increasingly opposing their own state, their own country. They don't see the essence of the country, you know, which essentially is supposed to protect them. And one of the reasons for this is how agents of the state treat the people. You know, one example is extrajudicial killings. So to draw from Oyibo, for instance, in October last year, separatists, you know, allegedly killed cops, you know, police people. And instead of the security agencies and the intelligence agents to track the culprits and then bring them to justice in accordance with the law, what they did was to surround the community. They brought in trucks, you know, and then they deliver war grade violence on the community for several days. Nobody could go in, nobody could go out. They just surrounded the community and they started shooting at people. So what you then found in that situation is that it's made it easy for non-state actors to then gain support of the locals, because the people who are supposed to protect them, you know, they don't do that. Going to the northeast in northern Adamawa, for instance, one of the problem of counter-terrorism efforts there is that the security guys, they are committing abuses. For instance, taking people's land and converting the land to farm area. So they have made life difficult for the locals. So one of the survival mechanisms of the local people in areas, you know, around Madagali, you know, some part of Gombe in northern Adamawa, is working as logistics handlers for terrorists, because they've got nothing to do. So they collect money from terrorists, help them buy goods in the market, take it to them in the bush, or they serve as informants, you know, informing them of positions of the troops, or telling them that, okay, there's a new guy in the community who has got new money, who has sold this produce, then the terrorists would come in, you know, to pick him up, then they get money, you know. It's a very terrible thing. In other words, my point is that in the response of Nigerian security agents to the conflict and also the cases of extrajudicial killings, the states represented by the police, the army, and all that, they are losing citizens who are supposed to be sources of intelligence, sources of information to non-state actors. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Essentially, I have noticed about 4 reactions. The first one, like Mr. Busari said, is the feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. And you find that when you're trying to interview people, I was, for instance, in Gatawa, a community in Sabumbini local government area in Sokoto State, and the fellow challenged me and said, oh, after you're done collecting all this data, what are you going to do with it? What's going to come out of it? Because journalists come here, we talk to them, at the end of the day, nothing comes out of it. And the reason it still boils down to is connected to the lack of sincerity, because they say, we know where these bandits are. We know their locations. We are ready to take you to where they are, but we need to see legs on the ground. We need to see that the army is ready to actually take the war efforts to them. Recently, I was discussing with my colleagues about how, you know, religious doctrines actually promote some sort of complacency or improve the tolerance levels of the victims. So the fact that they think or they admit that, or whatever happens has been destined by God. So whatever will be, will be. So they just take, you know, whatever happens to them. They bury their relatives, their loved ones almost on a daily basis. They organize funerals. Sometimes they have to flee from the funeral service because the bandits still come there to attack them while condoling themselves. And they say, oh, we don't even bother taking pictures anymore because there are too many corpses. So the second thing is, I don't think we have a lot of willing collaborators. What we have are unwilling collaborators. And that's because, especially you find examples in the Northeast, where there are areas that are like under the control of both the Nigerian military and the insurgents. So it's a very delicate balance. It's either the soldiers accuse you of being spies to the terrorists, or for providing shelter or hideouts to them, or the terrorists accuse you of being spies to the military. So what do? You either you go for the side that I think would give you the better chances of survival. And in the Northwest too, you find that there are people, they would say, oh, there are informants among us that you are not even sure where you can speak honestly or openly. So you just have to be careful. And the third reaction is you find people actually joining the terrorist or insurgent groups. And there are various reasons for this. As you have said, sometimes it's also because of the atrocities committed by the state actors. In the Northeast, I've seen examples of somebody joining Boko Haram because they unlawfully arrested his mom, and she spent several years in Giwa barracks. And then when she came back, she asked and she was like, oh, he has joined Boko Haram. In the Northwest, we found examples of people joining terror groups because their cattle were rustled and they had no livelihoods. And then they were like, oh, if these bandits are getting photo ops with state authorities, they repent and nothing happens to them, it seems that's the winning team, so let's just join them. I think finally is also that we find people embarking on self-help activities, and like we have the Ansakai in the Northwest or the civilian JTF in the Northeast. So if the government is not helping, we've also seen instances very recently in Sokoto State where people are, even young people are, trying to manufacture local arms and weapons and to see whether they can defend themselves.
I totally agree with what all of them have said, and particularly, we just finished the big chat based on I agree with all they've said, and I was saying particularly we had just finished the Lake Chad Basin Governors Forum, which has to do with the 8 governors of the 8 states most affected in the Lake Chad Basin: Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and of course Nigeria. And particularly one of the things they mentioned is, which is the reaction that is most recent. Well, it's been there, but that's what everyone is talking about, is what you referred to, the issue of, accepting ex-combatant, repentant, Boko Haram members and giving them a seat to a better life, whereas their victims are still suffering in camps. So even the governor of Difa in Niger, and of course the governor of Borno State, Professor Zulu, mentioned that that's the biggest problem that we have now in terms of how do you truly forgive and reconcile with someone who kills one's father, and that person is brought back into the society, into the community, not even into the community, given a home, given, living well, protected by the state government, whereas the family, the victims, are still displaced in their own community, still living in camps. So there is that huge conversation about how do you truly forgive these people, and bring them back? How do you merge them? So the conversation is, if you must resettle these ex-combatants, repentant bandits, whatever you call them, you must also match it with giving a better life to those victims who are still living in camps. That's one. The second one is, when we went into Chibok, I think it's called Stockholm Syndrome, when you begin to sympathize with your attacker. Most definitely, there is that feeling of despondency that is left to that utter acceptance of their faith. So when we went into Chibok, this man, the daughter is one of the Chibok girls, and she's not returned. However, the terrorist has been in communication with the family and still saying, never you call, don't look for her again, she's now my, and all of that. But then while we're there, the man played a voice note, when the girl said, oh, you don't have to worry about me anymore. I'm doing okay. They're taking care of me. I don't have to come back again. Our faith, Allah, a lot of things. So they've come to that point where, they've accepted we'll never be out of this place again. The state government is not going to do anything again for us. So we might as well just continue our life with these people. This is our fate. In Kagara, a father told me that, see, this place is where we were born. We cannot leave this place. Whether anything that happens, whether bandits or no bandits, will continue to be here because God has destined that to be here. That's corroborating what you said. So yes, there's that issue of religion. There is that trust deficit. Even sometimes when you come as journalists, they say, we know the journalists who are here to get information for money. I don't know whether you've gotten that feel. And we know the journalists who are coming to tell our story. There is also that fatigue of telling their stories over and over again. You have to convince them that I am for you and I want your story to be told, not because I have a stake in it. So generally, there is still that fear, by the way, because in all of these regions, even as we speak, both ISWAP and both Boko Haram, both bandits are still very, very active. Believe it or not, the government, of course, say they're winning the war. Speaking of Mr. President's speech, I don't know how much of that we're winning. But what I do know, particularly, and I'm sure there are people who are here who can also attest to that, is the fact that these terrorists, they're still very much active, and violent extremism is still across board in all of the regions, and we still see that. So there is the fear of those who have to live with these bandits and these terrorists every day of their life, and there is also the fear of those of us who go in there, who, by the way, these bandits and terrorists do know, and who are also targets. So how much of this do you want to continue to do? Much as we want to tell the people's story, how much of your life do you really want to put out there when you know that you do not have security over your life? So that's also crucial.
Thank you guys for your illuminating work and the experience you've shared. I don't know if there are questions from the audience. We'll take a few questions then. Yes, your name, your organization, and who your question is directed to. The lady.
I probably shouldn't be the first person asking, but I'm just curious. So anyone can answer. Do you think that the media is acting as do you think the media has amplified terrorism or the acts of terrorists? Do you get what I mean? Is that some people argue that if you don't give them publicity, then they would not, do you get, they see that you're paying ransom or you're giving some form of relief to whatever. Do you think that the media in a way attributed to the rising insecurity in the country? Second question is, how do you manage your mental health? And it must be mind-boggling. How do you sleep? Yes, that's it.
So we'll take a couple of questions here.
Okay. Once again, good day, sirs and ma. My name is Kemi. I'm a freelance with HumAngle. Okay, she has asked one of my question, which is, how do you manage your mental health as conflict reporters? One other question I would like to ask is, in the aspect of impact. Now, I know that you have cited several examples of how the government and constitutions has failed to address this impact or bring justice for whosoever in question that you're talking about or whatsoever issue your story is trying to address. But have you ever, I want you to share your experience, have you ever dealt with a troubling victim that is expecting impact from your story directly? And how do you manage it? I'll give you a good example. I had to do a story, I think about 2 months ago, and I can tell you that till date, the victim is still like messaging me, Alpha, we have not seen anything. I'm like, I'm not the government, this guy. I mean, one particular, I had to, not the government now. So how do you deal with that personally? Number two is Nigeria, because of the Nigeria, well, because of the kind of conflicts that we experience worldwide, we tend to give different names for different happenings. So we have bandits, we have Boko Haram, we have unknown gunmen, we have so we just have now. So how do you verify that? I think that would also go for Mr. Kemi Busari. How do you verify having to report a situation, report an issue at its heat, not trying to say that IPOB was the one that actually did it. This was the one that actually verified those claims. And okay, she has talked about mental health. Then I would like to I would like to ask.
I would like to give somebody the mic to ask.
This is the last question, sir. Permit me. The last is on sensationalism. How would you manage sensationalism in your reporting? Try not to make things your report to support this particular person, and just report to. Thank you.
My name is Manasseh Azuri Awuni, a journalist from Ghana. What is happening here in Nigeria, we monitor it and it's quite troubling. Unfortunately, we are beginning to see similar cases in Ghana on a very low level, but once in a while, the number of missing persons is rising. We are beginning to hear reports of kidnappings. As journalists who have dealt with these cases, what advice would you have for those of us in places that this phenomenon is beginning to rear its ugly head? What should we be looking out for? And what critical questions should we be asking our duty bearers so that it doesn't get to this stage? I think when Nigeria's case started, it may have started on a very low level, unattended to, and it blew up to this level. Thank you.
Just quickly, one last one. Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Taiwo. So my question is, anyone can answer it. Once you go out for stories like this, do you have in mind that what if I never come back? Do you have it in mind? And also the second one is with the phase of official denials and cover-ups by the government. Do you think public reporting or fact-checking is it doing the what's it called, like the impact that expected, or you think there's another method that we should adopt that can solve these situations? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we have about 7-8 questions. I'll just summarize or read them out, then you can take quickly. We have just about 10 minutes to the top of the hour. So you have, so there is a question about mental health for the reporters. There's a question about whether your reporting of voices in a way feels this, the conflict. Have you had any experience with troublesome victims? How verifying stories, issues of sensationalism, and what kind of advice do you have for countries that are beginning to see what we saw about a decade and a half ago? Then finally, your safety and also the relationship, official denial and your relationship with the authorities. Quickly, just spend a minute. You don't have to. One person can take one, and then. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I will quickly answer Kennedy's question: how to manage a troubling respondent. So you've gone out to do a story, and some of the people you interviewed keep calling you to ask nothing has happened since this time you came to do the story. What's happening? So I think the best way to go about that is to be transparent enough whenever you're going to talk to people. Let them understand your own responsibility as a journalist. I'm coming to talk to you about this thing. The power I have is for me to amplify this and for me to get it to the authority through my medium. I don't have the power to prosecute. I don't have the power to arrest or whatever. So you always let them understand that.
And there was another question on if fact checking and investigation is enough, or what other method can we adopt? So I think the social media has given us a very good tool for us to also try to push for impact these days. Some people have some very big followings on Twitter. They can use that to ask for impacts on the social media. Another thing I think you can do, which is what I did in the case of my story, is to follow through the legal process. About 4 months ago, I was in Kaduna to depose to an affidavit on my investigation on the killings that occurred in the Nigerian Correctional Service Center. So it was about 15 to 20 page affidavit trying to tell the courts the things I was able to get from the inmates that witnessed the killings and some others. So you can also follow through the legal process to get some impact. And finally, how do you manage your mental health? By watching Squid Game.
Epic.
Thank you very much. Let me also try to quickly respond to some of the questions. First, what Tosin raised is a very huge debate, as we all know, in the media space about covering terrorists or criminals. A lot of people believe that I think there's fundamentally two schools of thought. Some who believe that the terrorists survive in with the oxygen that publicity provides them. I actually don't believe that, especially within the context of Nigeria. We've known that these people have been doing this prior to even media attention, any serious media attention, and a lot of them still don't really, a lot goes uncovered still. And even with Boko Haram, this is a crisis that is ideological, and I don't think media or not media will either change what their beliefs are. And in fact, therefore, I'm with the school of thought that believe we need to report all sides of conflict. We need to also even help others as media, help the public and policymakers understand nature of the conflict and also the actors themselves. In Daily Trust, for example, we've done 3 different profiles of key bandits, including one that generated a lot of controversy because people felt we were promoting him, the guy who downed the knife jet. We did one cover on that. We did on Ankaremi, talking to people who know him very well, his antecedents and things like that. Then there was one we did on Malam Abba in Kaduna, who is affiliated to ISWAP, but based in Kaduna. Then quickly to the question from our Ghanaian guest. Honestly, the bad news I want to confirm to you is true that what you are witnessing is actually flowing from here, because when I traveled to the bandits then in February, they told me, they say, from here where I'm standing, I can show you, just like the way I'm demonstrating, he said, I can show you from here to Mali, from here to Senegal, to Central Africa. And he said, from here we can go up to Ghana. Then some weeks later or some months after, I think because I was communicating with one of them, and he sent me a picture of a cow, well-fed cow. I say, this is beautiful. Where is it from? Is it yours? He said, no, that it belongs to some relative of his. They are now around Ghana. so he said, I said, Ghana? He said, yes. He said, so actually we spoke on the phone. He said, from here it's very easy to get to Ghana once you cross through Niger. And, they had been disturbed around Katsina, so they moved towards there. And because that, and I want to make this very quick point. When some of the clips from my interviews went out, somebody was saying, oh, this, what we are saying, these people are not Nigerians, this and that. But what that Guy, and a lot of people with that view fail to understand, is the very migratory nature of the Fulani.
Yeah.
So a Fulani man can live, maybe he's originally born in Abuja, but he will leave Abuja and go to Douala in Cameroon, some village there, and spend 5-10 years. And then after that, maybe he will go to Niger and spend 2 years. Then later he will remember his ancestral home in Abuja and come back. So they are very fluid, very migratory, very mobile. So it's therefore difficult to even track their movement, and that's why they know a lot of these places. So therefore, I think what you need to do are two things I will advise. One is to look out for trouble, for the sparks, especially conflict with farmers in terms of Adebayo has spoken elaborately about the resource conflict. Are there conflict happening? Are there competition for resources? Then secondly, you also need to therefore report these things as they happen, because one thing that Nigeria, we can tell you from our experience, is that because for a long time, both the media and the government did not pay too much attention to all of these conflicts, from Boko Haram to bandits, because all these things have been happening for decades. If you ask the experts about what are the drivers or the instigations for this banditry, they will tell you some things even dating back to over 50 years, even before Nigeria's independence. But because of because of neglect and all that. But we all have to be concerned, because my story coming out soon is on border security. We should the porosity of the borders across the Sahelian region, or all this area, the African countries especially, it makes it very easy, very simple for people to move around unidentified, because apart from that, the borders are porous. We have the same socio-physiological resemblance, that people don't even know whether you are actually from Nigeria or from Niger. Like myself, I've a lot of times been mistaken for so many countries. So that's it. I think these two issues, these two things, you need to look out. What are the drivers? Maybe are there conflict with farmers? Then you should. Sorry, why I brought up the issue of border is to tell you that with these open borders, it means that movement of arms, which are in abundance in this our region, is very easy. The Sahel conflict in Mali, in Burkina, in Niger, these are like the hotspots from where arms are moving to almost all our countries, and therefore it's very easy for all these people to move with arms down to Ghana and then prosecute what they feel is whether it's source fight or ethnic, because there's also ethnic dimension to it. On impact, I think one of the most important, I always tell people, one of the most important drivers for impact is staying on stories. I will say this because I have done that and it paid off with the Adebayo stories that I did in 2017. Why that story made impact was only because we stayed on it. Had it been we just did only 1 or 2 stories, then nothing will happen. So I advise even for Kemi, for example, to revisit with a story these issues that maybe 2 years after these people have still not gotten justice. So it's important. It's really frustrating. As he said, I could identify with him. Like when you do stories and people feel as if they don't matter, or as somebody once told me, and I was really angry last year, that it was a political corruption issue, and the person said, this is a friend who was asked to reach out to me, and she said, oh, even whatever, this thing will not stop. So I said, as you said, that, well, mine is not to stop it, but to report it and somehow insist with follow-up. Sorry, I'm just lastly on the issue of fear. Actually, for me personally, I think that is my strength. The fact that I don't really entertain fear that much. Maybe when I see it face to face, but on a general sense, like to project that something is going to happen, I really don't. Like even when we are going to the bandits and this guy was, and he's a local and he was supposed to even give us some encouragement and all that, and he was saying, you know, these guys can be erratic, they can change their mind. I really didn't feel anything. And the other person I went to, because my trip, though I initiated the travel, the bandits said, oh, we don't read newspapers, you know, it's radio that we're listening to, so you have to get us a radio station. So we spoke to Voice of America House of Service, who now sent a reporter from Kaduna to join me in Gusau to travel together. So that guy almost fainted, you know, so like, well, he's an elderly person, or maybe over 50. And then when he saw the guns, by the time they you know, all rode on motorcycle. By the time we arrived at the point, he was begging for water. He had, his mouth was dry. I'm serious. They were laughing. It was even that was, so they were laughing at him. We know why you are doing this. So like even when the Kemi Adoption stories I did, a lot of people were expressing fear for my personal safety, but I really, of course, tried to adjust, but it didn't really stuck in me that I have to be fearful about it. Because one thing I believe, maybe I'm also among the fatalists, I believe that one way or the other man must die. But of course, you don't really go straight into the harm's way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Quickly, please, a minute each.
Yeah, thank you very much. Starting with Manasseh's concern about Ghana's having the experience of what Nigeria is currently going through. For us in Nigeria, we started late in terms of reporting these problems, you know, so the government was very much at liberty, you know, they were not doing anything because there wasn't the kind of information people require to hold them to account. You know, therefore, the media in Ghana, you know, can help prevent, you know, the Nigerian experience in that country. And one of the things you can do is to conduct balanced on-the-ground reporting. You know, the kind of reporting that is capable of producing copies that would help people have clear understanding of the issues, the drivers of the conflict, you know, and also afford the people the kind of information they need to demand accountability. I know Ghana is also a plural society, though not as much as Nigeria. Don't repeat our own mistake. Don't try to ethnicize conflict. These people have little or no concern about any religion or ethnic group. The bandits or terrorists, they perhaps need another Kemi of Ottoman Fodio to be Muslims. They don't have any concern about all those things. Just do a kind of story that will show that, okay, these people are killing, the security people are not doing their work, so that the people, you know, whether Muslims, whether Christians, whether Tui, whether something, you know, they can come together, form a common front, demand action from the government, you know, to deal with this issue. Because in Nigeria, one of the problems we have is that even if a government is very serious, government with the best interest, it says, oh, this is the policy path towards solving this problem. A group in Nigeria would say, no, they want to take our land. Oh, no, they want to use this group to do this. Or they'll say, oh, they want to break away from Nigeria. Maybe it's in the Eastern Nigeria or something. You know, we don't have this way of, you know, we don't have capacity, I'm sorry, and it's very sad, for elevated thinking in Nigeria. I think that you people should never allow that to happen in Ghana. Yeah, about serving as accusation of serving as mouthpiece, you know, for criminal groups, you know, for terrorists. The question journalists should ask themselves is, if you do not do this thing, how would the people demand accountability, demand actions from the government? How would the people ask questions about, you say you are spending 2 naira on securing this place, yet people are still being killed there. So we should brush aside these concerns about anyone accusing us of serving as mouthpiece for terrorists. The most important thing is for us to stand on strong ethical and factual ground. The information you are producing, ensure it is factual, and be very fair, be very professional, in producing this information. Don't subvert your own country, but continue to do your work so that people can ask questions, people can demand accountability. Also about naming, about naming in our stories, when violence happen, about, so is this bandit, is it ASN, is it Boko Haram? I think context matters a lot, even where we are not able to say, oh, this is the particular group that has committed this crime. One, as conflict reporters, you have sources on the ground whom you can talk. You can have, some fair description of the area, even if you cannot say ESN has committed this thing, Boko Haram has done this thing. You can say that, however, attacks, allegedly committed by this also group had been happening in the past without naming any group, so that people can have a kind of understanding that it's possible, that it's this group. But above all else, as journalists, we must develop strong contact bank so that you can ask people on the ground, okay, how did they operate? What did they do? And as journalists covering conflict, you are an expert. You should present yourself as expert so that you can describe this thing to the public. Let me give this example quickly, please. I think just before now, or even maybe still now, when any form of abduction happen in Nigeria, people will say, oh, it's Fulani. Any abduction, even if it's a place like Nembe in Bayelsa State, you say it's Fulani. But if you have covered these issues in Nigeria, you should understand, how these guys, how they operate. If abduction happens now and a victim is taken to walk, kilometers in the bush, you can say, this is likely to be Fulani because they have very great understanding of the bush, that's of the routes, and they can endure like more than any group in Nigeria. They can walk several hours in the bush. You can say it's Fulani, but a vehicle, maybe a Corolla, will lead a Lexus. Then two persons were picked from that Lexus and they are taken away, and you say, oh, Fulani have killed. And you see journalists too, say, oh, Fulani terrorists, Fulani kidnappers have done this. How can that possibly, be Fulani? So these are the things that we as conflict reporters, we should understand, and we try to provide information in our story so that we can, shape the understanding the public has about these issues. About troubling respondents, like Kemi said, I think we have to be transparent. We don't have to present ourselves to respondent as messiahs or something. One of the things I've learned from development research is, clarity. Tell them that, okay, I don't have any responsibility whatsoever to ensure that action follows. What I've come for is to tell your story, provide the information people need to act. What happens afterwards, it's not my responsibility. Yeah. Mental health. If you drink, I think that could be helpful. If you do women or if you do men, that could be helpful. I don't drink, I don't drink actually. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I don't do women too actually. Yeah, I don't do women too. Yeah, I don't do women too. I don't do men too. No. I'm straight, So I think, one thing that has worked for me is to get light conversation, with cool people. Maybe, admittedly, maybe a lady who is cool, you can have some conversation. And if you do a lot of music, like me, I do a lot of King Sunny Ade, or Naira Marley, That's
Thank
fine.
you so much. That's some very practical intervention. Quickly, we have 2 minutes, please. We have to
Okay, so I'm just going to react to 3 questions. First one is whether or not the media is amplifying the crisis or whether there are risks along that line. What we've noticed is that there is a lot of hypocrisy in how people see conflict reporting. And there was a statement that Madam Abdulaziz made, which is very critical, and that's the fact that our job is also to promote understanding. You can't solve militancy or terrorism just by sending armored tanks and guns and artillery to the field. You also need to know how are people getting radicalized, what are the needs and the aspirations and the life goals of the bandits, if any. That's how you solve the crisis. And you also find this hypocrisy in even the military brass. Recently, Daily Trust did a report about the perceived death of the ISWAP leader. And then they contacted one military spokesperson and he said, oh, it's the media that knows what's happening in their rank too. The military does not, that's very pedestrian. So as the military, you don't have intelligence of the politicization and the updates and developments taking place among terror camps. And so you need intelligence, and still you still have to come back to the same journalist. You want to negotiate for the release of kidnapped victims, it's still the same journalist that you go to. It's not supposed to work that way. And then finally, I think we should always try to focus on the victims. So don't focus too much on the ideologies and reactions from the military. Go to those who are directly affected by the crisis and let their voices be heard. Managing sensationalism. One thing we've done at HumAngle is to, number one, have a standards desk. So there's somebody trying to edit out the biases of the reporter, and then have multiple editors, such that if somebody who is Fulani, the crisis in the Northwest, okay, then you have somebody from different ethnic background edits that report to make sure that it's not being too sentimental or editorialized. And then also always try to, sometimes it's a matter of policy. Do not prioritize traffic or readership above the ethics of the profession, and always try to update your vocabulary and your approaches. For instance, at HumAngle, we in the past made the mistake of sometimes classifying or labeling some attacks as how do you put it, like a bold attack on military bases, or I'm trying to get the word now, a daring attack. We eventually realized, oh, it's wrong to do that. And sometimes you find people saying, oh, the gallant soldiers and all that. So you just want to be as objective as possible. And then finally is advice to Ghana. So first and foremost, it's important to document. The Council on Foreign Relations has a project called the Nigeria Security Tracker, where they give the total number of fatalities of victims of crime and all that. But the fact is 99% of their sources are press reports. So if you see an attack going on and you ignore it, it means you're also trying to downplay the issue, which will make it convenient for the authorities to do the same. The second thing is responsible journalism. You already talked a lot about that, which is that do not ethnicize the issues and make sure that you're as balanced and objective as possible. Then I also want to add that you should focus on the root causes. So if you know that what is fueling the organized crime is scarcity of resources, is the fact that the police agency or force is not well funded or well equipped, or the fact that the military does not have efficient resources to work with, address those issues as well. Don't just try to be superficial with the reporting, but say, oh yeah, the constitution needs to be revised such that we give more funding to the police, or these areas are not feeling the dividends of democracy. That has to be in place. And then you just find that those things are directly linked to the fractures that are taking place conflict-wise. Finally, collaborate with other news organizations so that your stories can have as much publicity and impact as possible, because security is existential. It's not like education that you would say, oh, it's a long-term reward that you reap from it. It's immediate. If there's no security, you can't live to achieve greater GDP, greater literacy rates, and so on. So it has to just be prioritized by everyone.
Thank you very much. Quickly, Amaka.
Okay, just two things. I agree with everything that you've said. Mental health, beyond his practical example, I just really want to say therapy. Most media, I don't know, some media houses may not provide for that, but it is essential for your own sanity that you do that. So typically what I do whenever I go in and come out, I go for therapy. Counseling is very, very expensive in this part of the world, but hey, you need it. There is this group in Nigeria called Mentally Aware, that the best people that you can talk to as journalists. So ring them up. They have counselors, they have psychologists, people who would help you talk about, all the things that you have inside and be able to purge your system. I've had nervous breakdowns so many times. So I tell you, it's important to go for therapy. The second thing, safety. Do you always feel, typically you would not see me dressed like this. It's just for this conference. If you're going into the place, you dress like them. Language, if you have language of where you're going, fantastic. I speak Hausa, so it has saved me so many times. Journalists are targets. We know that, isn't it? We know that these bandits and these terrorists, they also watch you, they know you. So just very quickly, when Kaduna happened, we had this meeting with supposed ex-repentant bandits who was negotiating the release of these people. So, when we're having conversation, he didn't realize I speak Hausa and I understand Hausa. So, somehow he just looked, I had the mask and I wanted to take water. So I put mask, trying to take water. And he now said in Hausa, but wancan shegiya da tana magana at television, is that not the bastard who's talking about us on television? So as soon as I heard that, I cringed. So I turned, took water, walked in front, sent a message to my camera guy, meet me in the car. So yes, there are times when you really come close to that and they know you, so you have to be deliberate. The way you dress, if you know the language, there are things that you also just pay attention to. You don't have to. You have to be alive to get the Pulitzer Award.
Thank you so much, guys, for this illuminating conversation. On behalf of VITS, PTCIJ and partners, I would like to thank you for being part of this and the audience for participating in this. Thank you and good night.
Okay, online, okay. Yes.
Question is from Silas Jonathan, and it reads, is there a point where any one of you had to give out money or other incentives to motivate a victim to either speak up or feel comfortable to?
Very quickly, can I respond?
Yeah, of course.
There are fixers. When you go to certain places, you need fixers. It is international practice. You pay your fixers to take you to certain places. It's different from paying money. Anytime you begin to pay money for story, you are already in trouble because they will tell you fake news. They will call you up and say, oh, this has happened because you're going to pay. Best thing for you, do not pay. But if it's a fixer, it's an international practice that you have fixers. I'm sure you have something to say.
Yeah, that's. I think you have answered the question somehow, but I mean somehow perhaps on a theoretical level, but in practical, I don't know. For me, I would say no, I have not, but there are instances where after, not like for the story or for them to talk, but after, because these are conflict areas and the devastation is too much. After the interaction, I will leave. I mean, on my way leaving, I will say, okay, take this little amount, just out of compassion, not because of them to talk. Yeah.
But there's a clarity. You explain that to them, what you're doing, essentially, I'm saying.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think, Amaka, I think we are talking about, the question was, I think, more straightforward. Like, have you given money for sources? I have not, but I'm just giving an example of something which, even without the story, one can do.
Yeah, just to add to that, my position is not to give money, and I don't do that. But I've spoken with some of our colleagues that would tell you that if public interest is at stake and you don't have any other way to get that information, you can give money to the victim or the respondent to get information. That's open to debates, but the best practice is not to give money.
Thank you so much. Please, Peter, how would you like to take this photo? Okay, please, for a group photo. Please put your hands together for them. What a great way to end the session today. Indeed, they talked about so many things. Please put your hands together for them once again. And I'm so glad that they touched on the issue of mental health, because it is obvious that a lot of journalists are worried or concerned about every other thing that happens on a daily basis, but they are not concerned about their mental health. And Ms. Amaka Okoye was able to tell us about how she has been able to handle her mental health. I don't know about you, but at PTCIJ, we have come to realize that mental health is important for journalists. And for the past 2 years, PTCIJ has been given journalists, Nigerian journalists, intervention, mental health intervention through our partnership with Olive Prime Psychological Service. So as a journalist, you don't have to pay. All you have to do is reach out to PTCIJ and they will definitely handle that for you. So tomorrow we are going to converge at 8 a.m. if I'm not mistaken. It is indeed a pleasure to host the 17th African Investigative Journalism Conference, Day 1. Thank you so much. I forgot to mention, but my name is Stephanie Adams Douglas, and we'll meet tomorrow. For those of you who speak Twi from Ghana, Medase. For those of you who speak French, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much and have a good night.